thank you everyone for joining us here live, or if you are watching from the comfort of your computer, for joining us for this panel on the Serpent Path. My name is Fuzz, and I would like to give our wonderful panelists a chance to introduce themselves. Just if you want to give your name, how far along the path you are, and how long you've been playing. So anyone who wants to go first, feel free to jump in.
I'll go.
Oh,
sorry. Did I step on someone?
You're good.
So Casey, you go. We'll just do it.
Okay. Hi, I'm Casey. My game name is Toya. I am a shiny new Serpent Knight as of like late last year. And I've been playing for about 6 years.
All right, let's go across the top. Let's go over to Maggie.
Hey, I am Maggie. I am Tiril the True. I am a Serpent Knight and a Master Dragon, and I have been playing for, I think, 16 years.
Okay, let's go down to Léal.
Hey folks, my name's Léal. My pronouns are he, him. I am a recently minted Master Owl for bell weaving, which is probably a little atypical for the owl path. And I've been playing for 6 years, 2015. That's the right math, yeah?
Sure, yes, that sounds about right. And then last but certainly not least, on to Brenna.
Hi, my name is Brenna. Game name is Ari. I have, as it stands right now, 9 dragons, 6 owls, and my brain just blanked on the last one.
Garber?
Dragons and
Garbers.
5 Garbers. I have been playing since 2006. So since I'm not necessarily the best at math, I'll let you do it, because this is going to be interactive.
Brenna, I'm gonna say that's 15 because I started in 2005 and I've been playing for 16. So let's go with that.
There we go.
I like it. And then a very huge thank you to Robin Moore, Dankry Blackwater from Golden Veil for doing the recording and editing for all this, and helping to make this possible. Thank you all very, very, very much. So without further ado, let's jump right in. So first question I will throw out to you all is, let's see, what was your introduction into the Serpent Path in Amtgard?
So in my case, I was a teenager going to art school, showed up to this cool thing called Amtgard, and one of the more experienced players said, hey, there's art competitions. And I was like, really? I mean, for me, it was very much something I was already doing, and it was a way to kind of be enthusiastic about Amtgard in a way that worked with a lot of the interests I already had. It's been a lot of fun.
I had a somewhat similar start in that, like, people were like, oh, there are contests, you make stuff, you should enter things. And I was like, sure, I make things. So I went to my first Kingdom event and I brought stuff because I was like, oh, sure, I'll just throw some stuff in and see how it does. And not well. I got pretty trounced, but I kind of learned a lot. And while it did initially kind of make me want to take a bit of a break from that aspect of Amtgard, I think it was good that when I came back, I made sure I went in with like a really different mindset and like, what am I entering this competition for? What is my goal aside from winning? And I think that's important.
One of the first things that happened for me to kind of start me on my path was someone wanted to do a dramatic presentation, and this was back like in 2007, maybe summer of 2006. And I had just started Amtgard, and I was highly involved in theater, either community theater and college theater. And I participated in this dramatic presentation that they wanted to do, and later on at court, they were like, "Oh yeah, and we wanted to give you this, dragon for your presentation." And I went, "Wait, what? You can give awards for doing dramatic things? That sounds amazing!" And kind of had a knight come up and take me under her wing and kind of say, "Yes, dramatic things are quite, prolific in that they're not necessarily just, you can just do them for fun, but they can lead to this path, and there's other ways to go on ahead and get to the Serpent Knight."
I think my very first touch with the ANS path was an arts and sciences competition at my first park. And I brought in a bunch of my old 4-H projects just to kind of learn how that process worked. The thing that set me on the weaving path was a weekend where I learned that my knight needed help weaving belts for his company because they were short on belts. And I said, "Oh, I'll learn how to weave belts and help." And all of a sudden I was hooked.
Weaving is very addictive.
Yes.
Yes. You reminded me the first thing I ever entered in arts and science competition was some bread that I brought for feast, and I didn't know ANS competitions were a thing. The people at Park told me to enter it, and my friend and I looked at the form and saw a place to write something, and we thought, oh, they want us to write a story. And we wrote this very long story about how this was the bread of woe, and there was a wedding where everybody was murdered. It just completely misunderstood this.
That sounds excellent. I really hope they gave you a dragon for the story.
I don't think they did. I think they were just like, you're okay, so like
Hate for effort, honey, but not what we're looking for, kind of thing, right?
Oh, for sure.
All right, so another question that we received, I know this kind of goes off, I know, Casey, you talked about going out and coming back in with different mindsets and stuff, but what for all of you has been your biggest stumbling block going down the Serpent path?
For me, my goal for a long time was just to enter something. Like for a while, it didn't really matter what it was. I just wanted to be part of this. I wanted to know people who were doing this. I wanted people to look at my stuff. I wanted to look at other people's stuff. And I didn't really get competitive or think that I had a chance to be a Serpent Knight until I was maybe like 8 dragons in. And then I was like, oh, this is a goalpost I could kind of see at this point. So I don't think that's typical. I know a lot of folks are more competitive from the beginning.
So do you say that, like, for you, that your stumbling block would have just not seeing it as a competitive thing, not really seeing it as a goal that you were like trying to achieve? You were just there participating, but okay.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, I was, I'm very much the art school motto of, sharing your work and critiques, and I wanted feedback, and I wanted to see what, just kind of be part of the, part of participating in that specific aspect of Amtgard, which has always been exciting.
I'm going to give what is kind of a cliche answer, but I think my biggest stumbling block is honestly myself. I have a lot of anxiety, and so when I'm making stuff, it's really easy to fall into that mindset of like, oh, I messed up this seam and it throws everything off, and the judges are going to look at it and they're going to say I'm a fool and the worst. And no, like, it's really not true most of the time. And like, it's so easy to dig yourself into that ditch and just lay there, and you really have to pull yourself back out and be like, no, I'm going to make the thing. I'm going to finish the thing, and I'm going to turn it in, and it's going to feel so good.
I think for me, my biggest stumbling block was actually two things. Was one, balancing real life was definitely something that like came up and was a stumbling block a lot. Was trying to balance, real life and needs, and family and career and a lot of different things, and letting that not get in the way, and also trying to be like something that I cared about and took time to actually care for. And again, kind of to piggyback off Casey, like my own self, like eventually just being like, this is what I'm good at, this is what I like doing, this is what I enjoy doing, and I'm gonna do it. Maybe not so much to get the awards, but just because I want to get better at the craft, because I want to get better at doing whatever I'm gonna do. So those are kind of the two things that I know I've struggled with.
I think my biggest struggle, and I want to note there's a note of privilege here, because like weaving's not the cheapest sort of craft you can get into. Like a single skein of yarn of macrame cord is at least $10, and that'll get you 2 belts maybe. So anyway, there's a certain amount of privilege that comes with the fact that my biggest stumbling block is not a financial one. I worked through a lot of almost an ethical self-critique, not in a like the wanting to know more about how to do something and to do the next cool thing. There was for a long time there was a sort of frantic energy around just doing the next cool thing and wanting to do the next cool thing. And then I started hitting the point of, am I doing this for the right reasons? So I spent a lot of time asking myself what those reasons were. And I think I still spend time trying to readjust what my reasons are and motivations. And that creates and created anxiety around my work.
So kind of bouncing off that a little bit, there can be a lot of stress that goes into, making things for the Serpent Path. So, and you all are, pretty far along. So how would you recommend getting the final awards needed when it feels like you're starting to lose steam?
The what awards needed?
The final last few awards for
Oh,
going down
yes.
the Serpent Path. If you're starting to lose steam, any advice to kind of help push yourself through that, or advice around that at all?
I think like doing the higher level awards, and this is strongly just my own opinion, but it's about planning and preparation and taking the skills that you've learned at the lower levels and applying them like in layers, as it were. So it's like, oh, I didn't just make a tunic, I made a tunic that has this cool pattern that means this thing and shows this technique and this technique. And like finding the motivation to do that, I think comes down to like, what makes you excited about this project? Like there has to be some reason that this project is on your list, and like finding that again and reminding yourself of it and holding on to it, even when you're like at that point of the project where you're just like, I hate everything.
Yeah, that was more, Toya ended up hitting on what I was about to say, is like, it has to be fun, right? If it's causing you stress, you should probably take a step back, because this game is supposed to be fun.
Remember to be patient with higher level awards. Like they take time and diligence that lower levels don't really kind of touch on. And a bit of wisdom that somebody actually gave me a long time ago is never forget what brought you together, whether that's in a relationship or whether that's something that brought you to the specific path that you have. Like, never forget what brought you there. And if you can identify what kind of brought you to that particular path, then you might just be on the right track. You just need to be patient and just keep being and doing and making things that you yourself are proud of.
The my general advice for, I mean, at least just like trying to figure out what to do for a higher level award is find something difficult and do it well. I mean, so many of the lower award things, I'm like, this is great. And people are like, what would you like to see more of? And I'm like, harder, like just complicate this. Can you needlessly complicate this and execute it beautifully? I would love to see that.
All right. So oh, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Keep talking. If you have something
I
else to
think
say.
something that really like makes like a project feel next tier is those little touches, those little like needlessly complicated, but the judges really appreciate that you did that extra little flourish.
Yeah, and you probably will too, even if it's hard to do. I mean, it's,
Not in the moment, but later.
yeah, later. Yeah. Yeah. Also presentation. If presentation is something you haven't paid attention to the first like half of your award ladder, start paying attention to it. It's, I do a lot of two-dimensional art. So a lot of that is like, maybe don't take a piece of paper and put it directly on the table, which is what I did for years. Or like, you know, how could we elevate this a little bit? Or like, how is a way we could make this more accessible to the judges who, I mean, just like, what is an accessible way to give somebody else a way to access your work?
There's an expression I like to use for it is like, good work should speak for itself, but it shouldn't have to shout.
That is nice.
Make it as easy as possible for the judges to see the awesome thing you made.
Yeah.
I think so. Something that helped me get up to the sort of that higher, the higher level awards was teaching. As soon as I started really taking the time to teach and tutor people, often individually, on like how to do weaving well, I ended up building a deep understanding of the theory behind it. And then because I knew the theory, it was easier to come up with new ideas, and it became infinitely easier to execute the needlessly complicated things because I really understood the deep theory behind it. And I think teaching also helped me get my work viewed. I will say I tried really hard to not have to enter ANS competitions for the I did not enter ANS competitions for the purpose of winning. I entered ANS competitions for the purpose of making sure that my stuff got seen.
Yeah. I know that.
Like I ended up with some wins, but I never intended to win. That kind of competition wasn't what I wanted. There are some people who love that, and that's a totally valid motivation, but it's not what I wanted. But the visibility is really important at the higher levels, because if people don't see your work, it doesn't get recommended.
Another thing that can kind of help, and again, this is sort of speaking from a position of privilege, but like if it is possible for you to go to another kingdom and try to compete there, try it. Because like every kingdom has its own culture of like crafts people, and we're a small world. And it really helps to go, you know, next door and see what they're doing, because they're probably doing something pretty cool too.
Hopefully the online world is starting to is going to break down those borders a little bit for us.
I think it definitely has in the last few years. I mean, just I don't know, Facebook, the ability to share pictures on Facebook way outdoes anything we were doing on the forums as far as trying to like show people what you were working on. And that like we definitely have in ANS community on Facebook with certain groups, and I find it very helpful.
Love when people do their like things that they're working on and like just talk about like, hey, I was working on this thing and here's what happened. Like, yes, tell me more.
Yeah.
Also, I think getting creative on how you access those higher level awards is also really, really important. I know for myself, like Bardic competitions rather than just arts and sciences competitions became a really important thing. You know, you guys are talking about like the digital kind of forums and the Facebook groups and different things like that. But let's not forget, you know, good old fashioned TikTok. Let's not forget YouTube and different things like that, you know, that we can get out there and kind of even reach a broader audience rather than just our kingdom, rather than just interkingdom, rather than just LARPers, rather than just LARPers who do boffer combat. Then it's suddenly getting out there into so many different things. How do you branch out and how do you gather and garner more of an audience that's going to come and see your work?
I love that point. Yeah. I mean, that also goes back to art for art's sake, right?
Mm-hmm.
It gets to a point where this is for the context of the game, but it is also something for you personally that has nothing to do with this lovely game that is dumb and silly that we all love very much.
I mean, when you're making a piece and you're like, oh, what is my motivation for making it? I feel like it could be as simple as just like, I just wanted to, or I just thought it would be cool.
Yeah.
My most recent big piece was literally a test for like resin inlaying rings. I was like, I want to try this technique. Well, now I got to put something on them.
Yeah.
So we have a question in the chat from Robin, and she asked, how does one regain the art for art's sake? Regain that feeling?
Really good question.
Do we have an answer to that? I don't know if I do.
I have a partial answer.
Okay, good.
I don't think there's an answer that's like a one size fits all sort of thing.
Right.
But when I was working on Fuzz's Paragon Warrior Sash, I was getting really burned out. I did that piece because I really wanted, like, there was a ton of motivation behind that piece, but by the time I was done, I didn't even want to look at my weaving. So I literally packed up my weaving. I put it all in boxes. I put it all in the storage room, and it was away for at least a week. I was like, I have to put this away for at least a week. I forced myself to take a break. I cried over it. I cried putting stuff away. And then I said, I am not allowed to go back to this until it's been at least a week or until I want to again, whichever one happens. Like, I need to want to do this before I go pick it up again. And that worked for me. It was easier to tell. After that, it was easier to tell when I was hitting burnout, and I was able to stop. And I stopped taking commissions. I stopped doing art for other people, and I said, well, I've got this big list of projects that I want to do because I think they're cool. And I started focusing on those instead. I gave myself permission to do stuff for me. And I want to put emphasis on, I gave myself permission to put myself first. That worked for me. That's not a one-size-fits-all.
I love that answer.
I also love that answer because that's my answer, and I'm currently going through a bit of that right now. Just to kind of give a nice, like, little neat package story. I started my transition about a year ago, and up until that point, I was singing and doing bardics and learning how to play instruments and things like that. And what has happened is I have had to rediscover myself in the midst of my artwork. And I have had to really take time to just go, why am I doing this? Why am I really making this? So I haven't written a song or done something like visually with, like, video editing or something like that for Amtgard for a while, and just kind of let myself make opportunities for other people to do that, making sure that there's competitions and things like that. Like the most recent thing was an Interkingdom Bardic competition that I recently got a chance to do. But that wasn't for me, that was for other people. And so sometimes it's this thing of trying to find yourself in the midst of helping others, and then also trying to find yourself in the midst of trying to find yourself. That's really complex, and I hope that makes sense. But it's this whole thing of trying to find out who you really are. And I think once you find out who you really are and how you connect with yourself, you're gonna want to make art. You're gonna want to make things. You're gonna want to do stuff.
I think also sometimes, like, if you're making stuff and you're, I know I got into this when I was doing like the competition circuit, where it was like every X amount of months I need to be at a competition with things. You know, you start making up arbitrary rules for yourself of like, oh, I can only make something that's like, you know, going to take me X amount of time, or is going to be competition worthy or useful. And then, like, I know for me, when quarantine hit, there were no more competitions, and I was like, what do I do? And like, it was, I mean, just generally a bad time all around. But like, you know, there's that process of being like, I could just make stuff because I wanna, or because it's been on my indulgence list forever. And like, all of these arbitrary rules I'd made up, I made them up. I can break them. You know, and I could just say no. And I think doing that every once in a while is kind of important, so that you don't fall into sort of a bit of a rut.
I have so much respect for anybody, but specifically in the lens of people who create things. Of if somebody asks you to do something, just being able to say, I'd rather not. I'm just completely in awe of anybody who has that ability. It's very powerful.
Yeah, commissions are great, but they're also terrifying.
Yeah, and they're also not always fun, and they're, you know, sometimes it's they bog you down, and I don't know, there's like some post floating on the web someplace about how if you commission something from an artist, they either finish it immediately or it takes them like 6 years and they will feel bad about it the whole time. Like, which is true completely.
I have both of those commissions on my docket right now.
I'm looking at a Post-it with one of those at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's but like there's a middle there, but yeah, no, it's hard. Commissions are hard, and I think like Léal said, giving yourself permission to not do that right now is hella powerful.
Especially if, like, you know, real life is doing things. You know, I think sometimes, you know, it's okay to just be like, my, you know, outside life is being super stressful right now, and this isn't making me happy, and I need to just do something that is making me happy.
Yeah. This is a game. This is a game inside of a game that we all play for fun, theoretically. And I think that is very important to keep in mind.
Yeah, am I having fun right
Yeah.
Yeah. My knight sort of text yelled at me once, and he was like, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it?
Yeah.
This is a game.
Yeah. Yeah. One of my squires had to, I mean, she decided, but she stopped doing performances because she would just get so miserable before them. Like, she would kill it. She would knock it out of the park, but it just wasn't worth the balance of like an hour beforehand feeling like you're gonna throw up and being miserable. Like the cost benefit just wasn't there.
So, that was awesome. I love just, you know, how that all flowed between all of you. But to tangent a little bit off the idea of making art for art's sake and continuing another facet of that, how do you all feel about, I'll kind of put this into two parts. Awards in general for items that are not entered into competition, like say you see someone just wearing something around or whatever, and then would you feel okay with having somebody who is a master, like a master owl or master dragon, master garber, that had never entered a piece into a competition?
Ooh, getting controversial.
I think depending on how far along you are on the ladder, ANS competitions aren't perfect, and we are coming up, like as a game, we are collectively coming up with other ways to showcase work in not a competitive sense, but at the moment it is, I think, currently the best way to go about that. As far as like stopping somebody and being like, that tunic's amazing, where'd it go from? And them saying, oh, so-and-so made it, and then looking it up and seeing they have like 2 garbers, I'd be like, absolutely, like get this person an award. But
Right.
that is becomes more controversial at higher levels. And that's, again, I don't really have a good solution to that right now, but at the moment, I think that is the best way to process that.
I think we can all really only speak to our own opinions, and certainly mine isn't. Anybody watching this is feel free to think I'm wrong. My opinion is that you shouldn't have to enter ANS competitions to earn a masterhood. I mentioned earlier I didn't really want to enter ANS competitions I didn't do it for the purpose of winning, right? I did it for the purpose of getting my stuff seen. I do think that because we are giving awards in Amtgard, that the work needs to be Amtgard aligned at some level, but I don't think it needs to be in a competition.
I will 110% agree with Léal. I don't think that you need to be a part of a competition, but I believe that, and I also believe that there should be more focus put upon people recognizing the work that other people have done. Just as a culture, I feel like sometimes we don't recognize our artists as well as we should have. Somebody pulls some art out of the back of their car and is just like showing it to a friend, and you kind of like peek your head around and you see this artwork that they've done and talk to them about it, and then we go on our merry way. Yes, that has happened to me. And then suddenly later on, it's like, oh yeah, I should have recommended that person for that art, because that's something that has, like, it needs to be recognized. So I think it's just us as an Amtgard culture of realizing that we need to recognize our artists a lot more.
I agree, but I think we need it's Amtgard. We are so good at the standardization model we have, but in that vein of that's what we have to work with, I would love to see a way to a built-in way for people to show their work non-competitively. I think that would help a lot, especially it would be less pressure. It would be helpful for folks who aren't very competitive and just want to make stuff. It would be, I don't know, I could just see that being good for people. And it's similar with fighting tournaments. Some people get really fucked up before entering stuff, and it's a lot of pressure. Yeah, I would love to see that, but as it is now, just hoping that people do that is, I don't know if I feel like I cannot count on that working.
Fair.
As it is now. I think it's a great idea, but how?
How's going to be the big question of like how to make something like that work. I know people have talked about doing gallery showings where it's
like showcases.
Showcases, right? Showcase kind of things that can just kind of just show off work.
Yeah.
I think the ones that I've seen have worked pretty well. And this being recorded in 2021, those showcases started popping up in the last year and a half, maybe. at least to my knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen one be in person. At least not that I've seen in my limited.
There was
Here.
like one at my park before COVID hit.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but I think that would be so cool to like come in and just it's a big room of tables and everybody's got their art on a table. You just kind of walk around. I mean, plague notwithstanding, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that as long as you don't have to look the artist in the face. I've exhibited at so many conventions and expos, and I don't like being in that position personally. But yeah, you can leave comment cards or something. You can have like a guest book kind of thing. I don't know. I've held one time. I held portfolio reviews as an ANS class, and not a lot of people came to it. But it was like I want to do more of that. Like I want to be able to talk to people one-on-one, and this is rambling at this point, but just other ways to engage in people's work besides competitions.
I love, and I'm gonna like tangent back to that conversation about like higher level awards. Like, why not have a portfolio review of somebody who's up for their 9th, 10th, or their masterhood? Like,
That'd be
why
so
not
good. Yes.
yeah, like that would be such a good idea to just be like, hey, what have you done? Where have you come along? And then at the very least, they can go, oh, well, this can be the next step I take. And at least it gives them some like clairvoyance as to where to go. Like, please, portfolio reviews.
Yeah,
like
a little bit of guidance, somebody to bounce stuff off of. Yes,
I think that's a great option.
yeah, absolutely.
Like I'd like to see that offered as an option.
All right, Crystal Groves, let's do this. Going forward, let's try this.
So speaking of Crystal Grove,
I'm not sure it should be like a requirement.
No, I don't think so either. But
like as an option.
Yeah,
offered as a tool.
Yeah.
Yes.
So speaking of Crystal Groves, let's do this. Well, quick comment first from Nez. They say a unique way I've gotten awards are for knighting gifts. So I think that is kind of like a way in line to think about. And then Steph asked, this kind of works because she is also from Crystal Groves, as are most of the people here. But what do y'all think about doing a showcase at, say, FOF and FOD, and then competition at UL KSM? So for those of you and anyone watching that's not from Crystal Groves, basically that would be offsetting every other event. So one event would be a showcase, one event would be a competition, next event showcase, next event competition.
yes.
I would almost want to switch those because isn't FOD and FOF are usually a little bigger? I would almost want those to be the competition ones. Just because then you get more people who are competing, so it's not just like one person qualified for Dragon Master and then they win.
Yeah. I like that idea. I've also seen, was it Up in Nine Blades? Man, I'm on so many Kingdom Facebooks, I don't know which one's which anymore. I saw somebody do a competition model where they had 3 different levels. You could enter at a showcase, so you're just showing, there's no comments, no feedback. You could enter at a sort of feedback level where I think there was maybe some competition there, and then you could enter full Dragon Master. So like, everybody could enter, but you could enter at whatever level you're comfortable at, or whatever you want to do. And all of it was available for award recommendations.
That's such a good idea.
All right.
I don't remember who did it, but it's awesome.
If anybody's watching this, let us know what kingdom did that.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
The people want to know.
All right, so I'm going to tie actually 2 questions together because I feel like they're a little bit related. So one of being, what innovation or skill do you think your path needs next? They gave some examples, so like what gap should be filled. Example being, Flame Path might need up-and-comers to contribute knowledge for online and hybrid events. So is there any kind of gap that you all see in areas of the Serpent Path that might need to be filled? And then if I'm another one was kind of tying to that. If there is any one thing you could change about the path currently, what would it be?
Both of my answers for that are honestly kind of tied and or similar in that like judges and judging. I have a lot of feelings about this, but I feel like we need to educate our judges a little more about like how we look at art and how we judge and like what are our criteria and like have maybe a little more standardization. And we were doing those judging panels for a while where people would talk about how do you judge this, you know, how do you judge macrame, how do you judge garb, that kind of stuff. And I think those were so powerful because it's like, oh, now I know when I pick up a piece of garb, like what should I be looking for? What is the best way to handle this? You know, like that kind of stuff.
Bring that back. Make it nationwide.
Yeah,
Well,
like a rubric
better
sometimes needs to definitely be something that comes back into play.
I've heard a lot of mixed opinions about rubrics. I definitely think judges, we need to provide more education for anybody who wants to judge. Rubrics can be, I don't think I've ever seen anyone, and I haven't judged a ton, but the rubrics that I've seen, when I've talked to folks within my sort of small ANS circle about all the handful of rubrics I've seen, everybody's been like, I kind of like this part and this part, and I don't like that. I've not seen a single rubric that really fits everywhere or sort of hits the right balance between objective and subjective. And then there's questions of like, how much does presentation count and how much does Amtgard context count? And there's so many opinions.
The first thing that came to my brain was, okay, so we need to have an arts and science competition for rubrics. So let's have a rubric for rubrics, because that's what
That
we
sounds
do.
like a Smith thing.
Brenna, no.
That sounds like a Smith competition.
Definitely
I'm teasing. No, but like, I totally understand. I totally get that. But what becomes the way in which we standardize? If not rubrics, great. Like totally. Like let's put that off to the side. Like what becomes our kind of way of bringing a standardization? And to kind of piggyback again, like off of something we talked about earlier, like changing our Amtgard culture. Like, so do we do more showcases? Do we do this thing where we are encouraging our underbelts to look for other people and ways in which that they can kind of reach out and award people for different things that are going on? How do we change this idea of awards? Because again, I'm one of those people who's like, yes, you don't ever have to enter an arts and science competition. So I understand that like this is highly subjective to my opinion. But how do we change that and make that something that we can, without any kind of judgment, without any kind of the word is in my brain and now it's gone. Without any kind of I guess judgment, bring people to this idea of wanting to be a part of the Serpent path, awarding them awards and moving them forward down the path.
One, I'll throw out a quick model and then maybe I can circle back a little bit to the original question. So maybe one idea is to have folks at the higher levels of awards, when we see opportunities for work, instead of taking it ourselves, we offer it. We say, no, why don't you have so-and-so do it? Like they would be great at it. Like maybe they're not as experienced as you are with it, and maybe but if it's a perfect challenge project for them, and bonus points if it's like emotionally important to them, because then they'll be invested in it. You know, pass off work. It's good for you and it's good for the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's like if you only have the one person who ever does the one thing, eventually that one person, they'll move or retire or leave,
Yeah.
Then you're like,
There was a point.
this thing.
There was a point in time where I was getting so many commission requests that I was like, I can't. And I started pulling on like other weavers that I saw, and I was like, hey, you have the skills to do this thing. Can I give this to you?
Yeah.
You would be great for it. Please, like, and it'll challenge you, and it'll teach you a new technique, and it'll be good for your growth, and you will create a good product that will be good for this person.
Absolutely. From what KC said, I have been the one person who did everything, and it didn't occur to me to pass stuff on. It was like, thing needs doing, I'll do the thing. I always do the thing. And then a new player was like, hey, can I do that? And was like, yes. Like, it just didn't occur to me. It was like, that would be amazing. And like, it just was such a good reminder to like, yeah, I know that also goes into leadership things and delegating and all of that. But yeah, no, that is a very good piece of advice.
So if we circle back to the like what needs to happen next in the path, and
right.
and like what changes would you make, like specifically for the weaving niche here, I think Tiril and I have talked about this. It would be really nice to see, and I think there's some motion in this direction. It'd be nice to see Amtgard kind of come up with a consistent language for all the weaving terms, because man, if I had to write a dictionary of all the weaving terms that exist out there, there's probably 5 different versions, 5 different
of
names
everything. Of everything.
Everything has at least 5 names.
Yeah. And that, yeah. Ugh.
And some of them are like one name is one thing for one person, and the same name is something else for somebody else, and it's all regional.
Yeah.
It's all regionally dependent.
Yeah, it's a nightmare to talk about.
It's so hard. You're just like, okay, I have to show you what I mean, because you don't know it is like.
Yeah, and
you
then
don't
there'll
know
be like
is this thing.
Yeah, and that, especially online, like you said, because so much of it's regional, it will be somebody asking for advice about a specific weave, and I'll be like, oh, I don't know what that is, and they'll show a picture, and it's like, oh, that? But it's like the communication's not there. We don't have the vocabulary for that.
So like that's the thing I would change. I don't know. I'd have to think more about what I would want to see in weaving next. I think the next thing I'd like to see is a motion away from plastics. We use a lot of macrame cord, which is polypropylene. We use paracord, which is nylon, or sometimes it's polypropylene. To be fair, paracord belts can be excellent for like towing a car out of mud if you need to, because it's strong enough. I've heard stories that people have used their belts to hitch a car and tow them out of a ditch. Macrame cord would never do that, but paracord will. But I want to see more people using scraps. So we're putting less plastic waste into the world, and I want to see us try to move toward more biodegradable materials in a manner that stays reasonably financially available.
I love that. I would so love seeing that in weaving.
Yeah. I can speak to a little bit of the Bardic world and what I'd like to see. I would like to see more attention paid to Bardics rather than just performances in ANS competitions, because there is this spirit of just like frivolity and vitality and vivification at Bardics, where people are just like suddenly sitting there with their friends, having a drink in their hand, and they will do something that they would never do at an arts and sciences competition. But suddenly you realize this person is having fun and having a blast and performing for other people. That's something that deserves an award and recognition. Also, to anyone who is new and interested in Bardic anything, whether it's literally just, I want to sing songs while I'm on the field, or whether I, want to pick up an instrument or anything like that. Do it.
Yeah.
Do it, do it, do it, do it, please, because I love the bardic arts in Amtgard, and I'm constantly looking for new people. New people, get out there and do it. That's one thing I would change, is like those people who have that inkling in the back of their brain, just if I could sit there and talk to them and be like, do it. I wish I had like a little sensor that was like, this person's possibly interested. Ooh, I'm gonna go talk to them, kind of thing.
All right, we got another question from the audience. So this is from Nez. They say, what is your advice for people that don't have strong artistic skill that plateau because their work is not seen as high award worthy?
I think that's tough because I think it's like everyone's good at something, and I think it's looking at what you enjoy doing and like really digging into it and looking at like the technical aspects of it and being like, oh, I really enjoy, macrame, but I don't think I'm good at it. Okay, like how can I make myself better at it? Can I talk to people who also do macrame? Can I like look at online tutorials, and like just keep kind of digging in and seeing what's in there.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, Toya. I've got sort of two answers. One is try something else. Like if you feel like you're plateaued in a particular skill, try something new. Bonus points if that something new is something you can combine with what you're already doing. Because if you want to get through that plateau, but are struggling to get through it in the particular niche that you're in, something you can do is you can pull a technique in from somewhere else and add it to what you're already doing. For example, I added wood carving to my weaving by carving beads for the end of the belts. I added resin working to belts by making resin inlaid rings. There's two things that are other skills you can bring into what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And the second piece of advice is really the same as Toya's, is find out what it is that you like about that thing and dig into it. I think artistic skill is something that must be cultivated. There is a certain spectrum of latent talent, but that skill can be built. And so if you figure out what it is that you like about it and figure out the fundamentals and work on it, and give yourself patience and keep working on it, you'll get past that plateau. Like, you will find yourself growing beyond where you thought you could.
Inez,
One-
I'm not. Sorry,
Oh.
go on.
Nope, gone ahead.
You sure?
Positive.
Okay. I was gonna say it kind of seems like you tried to answer your own question here, Nez, as far as it seems like you were suggesting that, I don't know, it seems like you kind of tied that in already, whereas I don't think it would be because people's work isn't seen as high award worthy. I think it would be what Léal and KC were seeing as far as challenging yourself and trying new things, and to tie back to what I said earlier about doing difficult things well. And I've talked to people who are like, I always use a pattern and make a new tunic or a new piece of garb, and it's not really getting me anywhere. And it's like, what you're doing is great, but you're not really, like, I wouldn't say that is like plateaued and not high award worthy. I'd say this is something you need to build off of, and this is something that I would love to see more of, is channeled in a different way, and I want to see more of this. Yeah, and talent is whatever you think of it, you can learn it. Put the work in, talk to people. If anybody wants to ever talk about art, please hit me up. Like, just try to, we will help you through this. We'll try to give you some new legs to stand on, but I don't think it's because people don't have strong artistic skills and they've plateaued. I don't think that's it.
I think that sometimes, I know myself musically, I have hit plateaus before where it's just like, I'll be rocking something, I'll learn a new set of chords, I'll learn something new, and it'll just work out great. And then I'll hit this moment where I'll plateau. I had realized that one of the best things that I can do for myself is take care of myself. So I'm going to do plateauing and burnout at the same time. Like, drink water, get plenty of sleep, take your medicine. Like,
Yes.
please take care of yourselves, because if you're not taking care of yourself, then you're not ever going to get through your burnout. You're not ever going to, get through all of those things. I know that seems like such like cliche answer, but please, make sure you're taking care of yourself in those hard moments, especially as you're going for those high level awards. Because the last thing you need is to have a panic attack or have anxiety about a work that you're doing and then mess it up and then just drive yourself further down into that hole. That's the last thing you need. So make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to just really, really, be so laser focused on I want to finish thing or I want to do good at thing that you do forget those things, and then you end up in a bit of a state. And it's you're not going to be making your best stuff if you're having a panic attack every morning.
Yeah.
Yes.
Be able to cut yourself off. Be able to say, I've had enough. I need to sleep. I need to step away.
I need to go talk to my friends and have a night out or something.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's usually no crafting past 10, because no matter what it is, I will not be doing my best work. And that's even if I need to finish it. No, can't do it. It's not worth it right now.
There's a master garber I know that says that they don't sew past midnight. And I think that's very smart.
Yes.
And speaking of meds, thank you for the reminder. And actually, speaking on best work, I think there's a point at which I agree. You won't be doing there are limits at where you're not doing your best work. But I also think you don't have to do your best work all of the time.
Yes. Absolutely.
That was a pressure that I hit with myself a lot. Because for a while while I didn't care, didn't particularly care about winning ANS competitions, but I am gonna enter this one, and I need to make my stuff ANS competition level of perfect. And there was a time at which I sort of stopped forgetting that I wasn't necessarily entering ANS competitions. And so my perfection, what was okay quality, just rocketed. And if it wasn't at this ridiculous level of perfection, it wasn't okay enough. And I spent way more hours on the work than I really needed to. And I'm going to use this phrase again. I had to give myself permission to not try to hit perfection. It's okay if the tension is not perfect between rows.
Yep. Yeah.
It is okay if the seam is not perfectly straight or curved or whatever it's supposed to be.
Maybe we should have a not our best work exhibit to try to just humanize some of this.
That would be great. I would love to see a your first piece.
Mm-hmm.
This is not my first piece, but also it's not my best piece. I still have my first belt. It is so bad. I love it.
I'm sure my first garb piece fell apart. I think I made it into a dinosaur during that round of dinosaurs at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's important, Léal, and normalizing that. And yeah, you're human. You're, take a break, make something that isn't perfect. It doesn't, just do it.
Plus, I feel like you're going to be a lot rougher on your project than any judge will almost ever be. Exactly what is wrong with each thing, and sometimes it's something so minor or something that doesn't really take away from the piece that no judge notices until you pointed it out.
Yeah.
Also, if you are entering competitions, don't tell the judges what mistakes you made.
Yeah, don't do that.
Unless you hit it so well that they will never find it.
It's not a bug, it's a feature.
Right? If you hit it so well that they will never find it, you can tell that, you can be like, I made this mistake, but I covered, but here's what I did to integrate it or hide it.
I have had bardic performances where I've done an oratory and I paused because in my brain I'm going no, I don't remember the next word, I don't remember the next line, what's the next line, and they're like, that dramatic pause that you did, that was so good, and I'm just like, yes, that dramatic pause where I was pausing for dramaticness.
That you did on purpose.
Yes, quite purposeful. But meanwhile, in the back of my brain, I'm going, oh God. Don't ever tell a judge that you messed up. Yeah, don't ever do that.
Just don't be that mean to yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. You made a thing. Be
Yeah.
happy you made the thing, and congratulate yourself. Let yourself be happy about your accomplishments.
Yeah. You know how easy it is to not make a thing? You didn't do that. You did it.
And celebrate all the things you learned along the way too.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that idea of you did the thing, you made the thing, be proud of it. That is such a prolific thing, because there's so many people out there who have the idea but never fulfill it, never create it, never make it, and you actually did. So you should take pride in that.
All right. So one question we received, another question we received along the line of competitions is, so what are your opinions on entrant anonymity, and why do you hold those views?
Theoretically, aren't all ANS entries supposed to be anonymous? We don't put our names on them.
Yeah, but you know who did what usually.
Yeah, honestly,
Yes.
In many cases, I think entrant anonymity is a joke.
But
there are times where it does actually work, but in a lot of cases, you know who did the work.
so do you think that people should write their persona name on the entries, and what is the alternative there?
Honestly, yeah, because I feel when you turn in stuff, a lot of times, even in the things when you split stuff up to the different categories, a lot of times you can go through the categories and be okay, I know this person made this, and they made this, and they made this. It just seems like it would almost be easier to be able to bring together someone's work from different areas, so that I could say oh, I see they sewed this really well when it was a Garber thing, but I see that they're not super experienced with sewing leather, and that's cool that they branched out to that.
Yeah.
So Tiril, you're asking what the alternative is. I think the alternative is doing anti-bias training with judges.
Okay. I could dig that.
Yeah, I like that.
Because that's the point of not. Sorry, Brenna. Let me finish my thought real quick. That the point of not putting your name on something is to remove bias. But I think if we can build in some education around not using recognizing and minimizing biases in judging, then I think we're going to be on the right path.
Yes, minimize the biases in judging, mainly because there's also times when bardics are not anonymous. You know, you have this entire thing where it's like, we actually see you, we know who you are.
That is very true.
Like, there's no way not to not make it anonymous.
Yeah, no, it's true. I am very, very open to things. I just want to know. I am definitely guilty of having suggestions and then having no follow through, and I'd like to know what people's ideas are connected to that. Anti-bias training sounds rad. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing you all brought up before too, just as a quick, that would probably fall into that, is just the idea of showcases, of being there and showing off your work in person to, you know, whether it's judges or just whoever.
Yeah. Another thought is Blackthorn did this once, and so most of Amtgard uses what's called what I think is called Swiss style judging. I'm digging back in my old 4-H days now. So Swiss style judging is the anonymous judging. Where, put it in the comments if I am totally wrong with the name on that. But it's that anonymous judging where you have a little write-up and you sort of explain what the piece is, and then the judge looks at it and that's it. Blackthorn did this once, and my county when I was a youngin' in 4-H did the in-person judging, where you take your piece to the judge and you have a conversation about what you did, why you did it, what you learned, and whether or not you met your goal. And you have that conversation with the judge, and then they give you scores based on that. And what I love about that model is that you get a chance to educate the judge at some level. Like, of course, the judges in 4-H were usually experts on whatever their medium was that they're judging, which is kind of the ideal with Amtgard, but that's not always the case because it's all volunteers. Anyway, when you have a conversation, you get a chance to sort of showcase your knowledge, which you can do in a write-up, of course, but it's more dynamic when you get to have a conversation, and you also get the chance to sort of show what you learned, again, in a sort of dynamic way. And I think that's really useful. The big con, of course, is that it takes forever.
Yeah.
And we already have a problem with how long judging takes.
True. But I think it would help address sometimes the problem you can have of write-ups where the judges don't read them, where they don't read them completely, like it.
Yeah.
I found it pretty common. I'll do something that's not quite maybe how something is usually done, and I'll put in the write-up like, oh, I did this way on purpose because aesthetic or piece message, something like that. But inevitably I will get a judge comment who's like, hey, you didn't do this right. And it's quite frustrating. And I think if I verbally could say that, it's a little more memorable for sure.
Absolutely, but going back to I'm preaching to the choir here about how long this takes. I am not as good of a judge on my 80th piece as I am on the first 50, and that's not fair, but I don't know how to fix that.
Yeah.
I agree. I do think that's something that needs to be addressed in this.
Yeah. Toya, I think you were part of that conversation. Was this after your knighting ceremony? I think we had a long conversation about judging techniques, and one of the suggestions that came out of that idea was the idea of requiring entries to be entered online for an in-person event, online at least a week early. So judges have a chance to go through and, over the course of a week, go through all the pieces and judge things at an initial level. And then you also have to take your item to the event. And then the judges do a second pass and update their scores, and then you're done. Like, yes, it requires Amtgarders to be more on the ball, but it's probably worth it for our judges.
Yeah, I mean, you have more time to kind of like be with a piece, you know, as even though it's more time investment for a judge, which might result in like more difficulty finding volunteers. Like, I got to see the piece virtually. I got to spend as much time as I wanted looking at the pictures, and then in person, I got to like, you know, actually look at it a lot closer. That'd be nice. Though as a crass person, the idea of a week less is terrifying.
Yeah, I was just about to say of that, like one less week. That last week can always be crunch week, you know.
It forces time management, which Toya's already quite good at, actually. But
No. That was the whole thought. Like, it forces times management too. It totally does. So suddenly, you know, about getting your project done a week sooner, which is something that, you know, can definitely be something that's really good. Then you have time to plan for the actual event, not just the arts and sciences.
yeah, exactly.
Going
right?
on the way to the event.
Although you could do something too where like if you really wanted to allow folks to still enter last minute like that, you could do you could incentivize it and do like extra points if you do enter it early. I don't think that necessarily get tons of bites. But I think you could also do something like competition has to be in a week early, but showcase can be there when you show up. Or something like that where you can enter up to 5 things total, but only one of them, but you have to do like, you can only have one thing show up at the event if you don't put it in the online thing. You know, some sort of balance like that to sort of get folks used to the idea of putting their entries in early.
It also sounds good because it isn't punishing people for not being as on the ball as they maybe would like to be. That still gives people an opportunity to show their work, which is nice.
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to like punish people who like, you know, had something happen during their event season where they didn't get as much done as possible.
Yeah, or even
Right.
if they just weren't up for working on it. I mean, still, they're human, you know, they're, I don't know. They don't need that. We don't need that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So for you all, what has been probably a huge positive standout moment? Like, what's one of your favorite moments that you've had along the Serpent path?
My biggest challenge ever. It was actually right around award like 6, 7, if you will. Like, it was right around there, like right around in that area. I can't remember what specific one, but I played a bardic song for an arts and sciences competition in 32 degrees and nailed it. Like, rocked it out of the park. And I was so scared that something was going to happen, like one of my strings was going to snap in the middle of the performance, that I couldn't move my fingers fast enough for what I needed to do or whatnot. But like, the fact that it was like this personal achievement of being like, you all may not understand how hard it is to play the mandolin in 32 degrees, but I do. And I really enjoyed this moment that I succeeded. So that was a moment that was like, yes.
Steel strings?
What's that?
Steel strings?
Yes.
Yep. So your fingers, you're literally playing frozen metal.
Yes, I'm playing frozen metal, and I had to let the mandolin sit out to get like accustomed to the cold. That way, it was like
tune it. Yep.
Right before. Yeah, I could tune up right before. So yes, I was truly playing cold metal. So
pretty metal of you.
Pretty metal, nice. Very well played, indeed.
Good one.
Seriously, that's super badass.
It really is.
Thank you.
I'll go next because I
Yeah,
think
go. I see thoughtful faces. Go whoever sees that one.
So a couple years ago, I went to Olympiad, and I mostly just went to go and to like meet people. And like going back to something I said before, like I try to be really careful about when I go to competitions going with a certain mindset. And I really went into that one like, okay, this is like the big leagues. I'm going to get stomped. So the point of going to this is to learn and do better next time. Like, yeah. And Feast came up and they called up 3 people, and I was one of those 3, and I was really excited, like, oh yeah, I placed. I'm so excited. They had us did a specific order, and the moment that I realized I was at this end and they were calling from 3 and they started at the other end, and like realizing that I had won and been like, that's not what I came here for, but holy, oh my. Like the feeling of unexpected joy was just something that was really nice. And I think as a crafts person, like, you know, you really got to take that and run with it sometimes and be like, I am going to use this to make so many things.
Yeah.
Do you want to go, Léal, or do you need some more time?
If you're ready, go for it.
Okay. So my comic, my Amtgard comic about, which is very much like a love letter to Amtgard, but is also extremely critical. It's something I did for a all-women's gamer anthology comic that was published, and I needed to wait until it had already been published to enter it in ANS. Like I talked to the editor and she was like, yeah, just like, hold on. Writing it felt like throwing up. I was like, it's one of the few things I've made that just took so much out of me to get to become what it was. I almost left it in the car. Several friends like were like, no, you have to go get that. Presentation was bad. It was a 5-page comic. I had to choose if I wanted to enter it in either writing or art, where of course as a comic it is both and not one or the other. All this stuff, I was terrified. And I had the most loving, positive experience from my community from doing that. And that was definitely my favorite ANS adjacent anything.
I've been thinking through all of the small moments. I know I've said I'm not a huge fan, like commissions are sort of on and off for me, but there is a certain joy in seeing people that I love loving something that I do for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really cool. And I think the other sort of favorite moment in sort of a weird way, I think it's more like one of my most proud moments more than necessarily a favorite moment. I made a playable chessboard belt. And that is the only belt project so far that I've done where I sort of had a plan and it all fell apart. My whole plan for that thing fell apart 5 times. And usually when something falls apart that much for me, I get really frustrated with it and sort of put it away for a while. But in this particular piece, I had the right mindset for it because I never once got angry with it, which is like, that's a huge moment of pride for me because like I just said, I tend to get frustrated when things don't go super well when I'm working on something. So by the time I finished that thing, I had 5 or 6 setbacks, which was sort of new for me in weaving and new for me in sort of ever. I never really got upset with it, and I just kept rolling with it and adjusting my process and like, okay, well, if this isn't going to work, let me try this. Okay, well, that didn't work either, so let's try this thing. And when I was done with it, I felt peaceful. I was very proud of the thing, very happy with it. But I was just like, this was a nice process. I was really pleased with not getting angry at something that wasn't going to plan.
That's wonderful. That is a hard to explain, very cool moment.
Yeah.
So next question is going to be, and this is going to be kind of on just support going down the path in general, and it's so we see a lot of knights have been belted into a family before they were ever knighted, and having that support help them grow. But how would someone who isn't belted gain that same kind of support?
Show me your art.
Ask for it.
I want to see it.
Yeah. Ask for feedback. Yeah, that's totally it.
Yeah.
Go
Ask
off.
for feedback. Ask for advice. And because I know that, like, it's an easy thing for us to say, of like, oh, just go ask for somebody for help. But I also understand that can be really, really
Intimidating.
yeah, it's incredibly intimidating because there are people that you look up to and you say, man, they're so good at this. How do I go, like, how can I even approach this person?
Yeah.
And if you're the kind of person who can sort of force yourself to do it, do that, because it'll go a lot better than you think it will.
People who make a thing really want to talk about making the thing.
They really
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
If you're not comfortable doing that, see if you're comfortable in a public forum. Like, we've got a lot of ANS anonymous, not even anonymous, like ANS Facebook groups. And if you're not comfortable doing that, find a friend who has some connection to somebody and say, like, hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so?
Yeah. Or say, hey, this is something I'd like to talk about.
Mhm.
Is there anybody you think I could talk to about this?
Right.
Yeah. It's hard though. That is a hard jump.
Or even if once we have in-person events once more and ANS classes, like if there's one being taught by someone who you're like, oh, I really love to do this and I do that, and not only go to that class, but like try to be more of like an active participant and like build that connection with that teacher, but also with your peers too.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, with other people who maybe are on the same level with you, who maybe are on that, maybe not like the teacher, but like somebody who like you're like, oh, this person's my friend, and maybe get a chance to go with them. You know what I mean? Like, go with them to that person, and just the other person may not have any interest at all, but they're there as a support for you as well.
Yeah.
So,
Bring backup.
yeah, bring backup is definitely a good idea.
Yeah. And if going to somebody's ANS class sounds intimidating, something to keep in mind is that sometimes nobody shows up, and I'm sure that person is fucking thrilled that you are there. Seriously, like, even if it doesn't seem like it, they're probably like, oh, people are here. Yay.
Been there, done that. Yes, we are thrilled to have people
Mhm.
show up. Even one person.
Oh yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
I'd say take this with a kind of a grain of salt, but I found one thing that can be kind of helpful. Again, going back to mindset, and you have to be kind of careful with this one, is a crafting rival, and a friendly crafting rival. Where
Oh,
you are there to support each other, but also you're like, oh, we're gonna,
Yes.
face off
Yes,
of this
yes,
next
yes.
competition amiably.
Oh, for
Fine.
sure.
But
Yeah.
I think that's something that can kind of like really be helpful for people to like, I don't know, strive to do something crazy and wild and fun.
It's the pushing each other sort of thing. On the flip side of that, you can also do like a buddy system with competitions. I have gone into ANS competition. So, quick context. One of the great tips I got from Godric Gray about weaving and entering competitions was that if you can, try to enter something simple or like average, like good quality, sort of average technique, along with whatever the awesome thing is that you're doing. And so I've gone into ANS competitions because it gives you the judges like something to sort of compare against. And so I've gone into ANS competitions where like I knew another Weaver was going in, and I was like, hey, do you want me to, like, somebody should put in a basic thing. Do you want me to do it? And so you can sort of strategize together.
That's lovely.
That is.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So just jumping off of talking about competitions and entering them and things being judged, you know, after things get judged, sometimes awards is what pops up. And how do you all feel about being able to, not being, but recommending yourself for awards?
Do it. You're not the person who makes the decision at the end of the day.
Yeah, do it. I always feel a little like, oh, but I believe that you should do it. Because like it's really easy for people to make stuff and for it to kind of fall between the cracks sometimes. And it's terrible, but it does happen. Especially if like you're in another kingdom competing. Maybe that kingdom doesn't, you know, communicate super well with yours. Tell your kingdom you made this thing. Be like, look, here, I make this.
I make this. Yes. And you're the only person who knows how much you've improved from the previous thing. We were talking about portfolios, and it becomes this idea of like, you know how much work and how much time and how hard it was to gain the skills to do this next level thing. If you feel you have improved that much, move along. Get yourself that award. At least recommend yourself for that award.
Yeah, I mean, the worst that happens is they say no.
Yeah.
Make something else even cooler, and then recommend yourself again.
I think there's a I don't entirely agree with the idea that you have to improve to go up the ladder. I've seen people who are masters at a craft like come into Amtgard and they've like expected to improve when they're already at a master level, and that seems a little weird to me.
I think it's application of it though. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're a master of this thing, but are you a master of creating this thing in a way that makes an object that showcases it the best?
So like if I can give a sort of a straw man example, I'm thinking of somebody who was in a different buffer sport and like made awesome garb for medieval fantasy buffer and then like came to Amtgard. And like the thing that comes to mind for me is like I would like to see them do that work for Amtgard, but I don't know that I would necessarily expect them to like improve upon themselves in the same way that somebody who's brand new at something would.
Oh, absolutely. I feel like they would have a completely different, like, as cliche as it sounds, like journey. You know, it would be more like, oh, I would want to see that person make maybe stuff that reflects the culture of Amtgard that's a little different, or like make stuff that's sort of a play on what they would normally do with some of the styles that Amtgard has. Like that would be awesome, you know. And I think that's not an improvement, but it's definitely something that would like feel like it was ranking up.
I have mixed feelings for recommending yourself, but I think part of that is just I've been in this game for 16 years, and as a culture, we don't do that. Which isn't to say it's wrong, it's just to say that is how it has been done so far in all of my experiences, is you need to kind of not quite play coy with your goals, but there is this kind of push and pull of like, I want this and I need to be ambitious, but also humble, but I need to be noticed, but also like, it's very strange. And again, like a lot of the crap I'm saying, I don't really have a good solution, but it is a weird yes and no for me. I don't think it's bad, but I am kind of uncomfortable with it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of the artist dilemma of like, you
Yeah.
want to be like, I made this, but also be like, I'm learning and, you know, humble. It's that weird, where's the
Yeah.
Where does the humility versus that, you know, showcase kind of thing come in?
Yeah, and like, I don't know, like kind of like what Léal was saying, it's sometimes it's also okay to be like, I'm very good at this. Like this is objectively a thing I do very well, and I'm not trying to be an ass about it, but you know, I don't know. I've worked as a professional illustrator and I have a BFA in cartooning and art. People will be like, can you draw anything? And I'll be like, yes. And not just like it's like, give me a reference. Yes. Like I don't know.
to find anything.
But like, I don't know. I could probably figure out existential dread or something. But like, as far as like, you know, like what about a robot? It's like, sure. What about a, you know, like, I don't know. It's, for me, at least, that isn't coming from a place of bragging. It is coming from a place of that is a thing I do.
Yeah, I think if you're sort of wondering, you know, should I recommend somebody for, like, should I recommend myself for this award? Ask yourself if you would recommend someone else for an award based on what you've done.
Yes.
And if the answer is
That's
yes, go ahead and do it. Be straightforward about what you've done and what you've learned. And remember that you're not the one making the decision at the end of the day. Like, your monarchy still has to decide whether or not to give you that award.
That's really
And
good.
you can remind them too. You can be like, you know, this is up to you, but here's what this is. And if it was somebody else, I would recommend them. So I'm putting myself in for it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Kind of bouncing off of that, I kind of have a policy that I do when I make a project, and I try to never make a project and be like, this is this award. I never try to assign an award to a project itself. I think that's a really unhealthy way.
Absolutely.
No.
Like, recommend it, but don't expect it.
Yeah. Be like, this would be awesome if this was or I believe this work represents this level of work, but not like, this is my 7th Garber project, because I mean, yeah, it might be, but like, what if it isn't? And then it's always the project that failed you.
And then you suddenly get burnt out because that project is suddenly not what it said it was going to be. Right.
Yeah, Denkri adds, like, avoid the thought I could get my X award for this.
Yes.
Like,
Good call, Dankri.
Yeah.
Yeah, versus like, I think the healthier way to think of it is like, I think this shows more skill than before. I think this shows this technique that I learned. You know, that kind of, I think that's a really great mindset.
Which requires a great amount of self-assessment in and of yourself. So if you're going to recommend yourself for that award, you really have to be like, okay, I know I learned X, Y, Z, and I know that, you know, ABC changed and was different, and I can show that, and I can talk intelligently about that. Like, that's the thing that needs to kind of happen.
Gonna have my shameless plug, but you know what really helps with that is making some sort of record of the work that in a print form you can refer back to, which is super
for real.
Yeah.
I started
doing your journals.
I started like a Facebook weaving journal. Like, I just have this post of pictures of every time I weave. I take a picture and post it on the thing. I'm like, this is what I'm working on today. Like,
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. And with Amtgard Awards, there's also, I don't know, I think one of the many reasons people get very emotional with awards is that in life there are so few opportunities for somebody to just directly be like, I see you and you're doing amazing. And I think we're all just really weak to that point in a way. So even if you're not getting an award for it, but you're getting some kind of positive feedback, like that's still an exchange. That's still something. That's acknowledgement. A lot of us need that. I don't know, but that also goes back to like like everything, everything we've talked about.
I mean, I think that's why it's important to sometimes go into a competition with multiple goals, or like not just I want to win, but like, oh, I would love it if I got a score in this bracket, or I would love if I placed this time, or
that's a great point.
Something else that's not just the top of the mountain.
Yeah,
because everything else is an accomplishment too. You still climbed a lot.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And in ANS to me, having judges' choices and best in show are still a relatively new ANS thing, and I love that because for so long it was just making something, putting it into the void, and then getting nothing. And I love that it gets people opportunities to be recognized, or even if it just some like, I mean, again, just somebody being like, I saw that and it was great. Like you didn't win, but like you really like that touched me. I thought about it. Like that's huge.
Yeah, I feel like as judge's choice, sometimes it's something that's like, I know this didn't score well, and it might not be the best example of thing, but I, as a judge, really liked this.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So moving on away more towards the subject of like kind of the end of the path with like masterhoods and knighthoods. If masterhood were to be more distinguished from knighthood, what would you want to see done to achieve that separation? And also, how do you kind of view the differences, you know, specifically in the Serpent path between the masterhood and knighthood?
One means the monarch decided to knight you and one doesn't. I mean, I think I don't think there's, I don't know. That's kind of that's a little tricky for me.
I don't think it's a perfect rule of thumb, and this is sort of my, I don't know, view of it. Is like a master is someone who is really good at thing. Like they are at master level of that thing. They're so good. And like they are known throughout the kingdom as that person who is really good at that thing, versus a knight who teaches that thing and like is more of like a mentor figure. Like, yes, they are also very good at it, but there's more of like a community aspect to it. That makes sense.
And if I can piggyback off of what you said there, Casey, it's the idea of also playing well with others in different forms, in different places, because suddenly when you become a knight, you don't just have to deal with Serpent Knights. You don't just have to deal with Flame Knights. It's Crown Knights and Sword Knights as well. And you become this figure that literally has to deal with not only people below you as underbelts, but people who are now this whole new branch of peers. Suddenly, like, and knighthood is something that requires that ability to work well laterally as well as vertically, kind of thing.
Yeah. Being a knight is being a public figure in a social game, and that's a whole thing. People have also described knighthood as it is a permanent office position. It's there is definitely more responsibility, I think, than being a master, and I think that's part of our social contract just with Amtgard. Yeah, but I mean, it's the difference between the two is, are you interested in being a knight, and does the monarch want to knight you? And those are kind of the two. I don't know. I keep coming back to that.
Yeah, I think that's a very accurate, like when you really dig down to it on the logistics side, I think that's definitely what it comes down to. And I think, Tiril, you're also right about the social contract side of knighthood. I don't have any more to add on the discussion of like what separates the two. So I'll think. So let me start us in the thought process of like, how do you separate the two if you want to have masterhoods be more recognized? And I think the most immediate thing that I think of is like it would be nice to see. It would be nice to see a reserved symbol for masters that is more likely to be worn. I think we've got hoods, but hoods aren't worn all the time. So like, is there something we can give masters that's more likely to be worn than a hood, especially in the hot summer?
Like a casual hood, like a hoodie hood, not like a ceremonial hood. We need the ceremonial one and the everyday hood.
Like, is there a, like, you'd have to think about it a lot, right? Of like how to set that apart. And then you also have to take the time to make sure that that those things are recognized. Mm-hmm. We have a culture of recognizing white belt means knight. Done. Yep. We have a culture of silver stripes means paragon. To a lesser extent, we have silver stripe on a belt favor is an apprentice, somebody who wants to be a paragon.
So we need as a culture to...
I have never heard somebody say, look out for X symbol on a belt favor. That means they're a master in this thing. I've never heard that sentence.
Robin kind of typed it in the chat, actually, but I mean, it's yeah, I mean, it's the symbol. Well, we recently culturally have these symbols of masterhood, and those were standardized. So we do have that, but I think it's new, and that might not be as ingrained in our like cultural vocabulary yet.
Right.
But yeah, no, that would be a nice. I would like to see more of that. I would like that to be something that is as easy to identify as the other things that you listed, but that also might just be because it's new.
Yeah, more celebration.
Yeah, that's true.
Breakdown, because that's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. Also, I love the hoods. I love that you get hoods.
The hoods are great.
Yeah, the hoods are great.
The first time I heard of that was from Alana Two Trees at a mac and cheese place in New York City, and like it wasn't done yet. Like it was like a local thing, and I was so hyped for it. And I love that more people are doing it. It's
right.
The hoods are awesome.
Yeah, I suppose the short version of my answer is give the masterhood ceremony, like masterhood presentation, a little bit more pomp and circumstance, and to work culturally to point out to folks that that symbol means that they're really good at this thing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. That's what the rest of our symbols mean for the most part.
So bouncing off of that, more towards the side of knighthood, but you could also, if it, want to throw in the masterhood aspect of it as well. But the question is, what do you think is the biggest responsibility that knights have? And we can keep this in the context of Serpent Knights, or if you also want to do in general, that's fine as well.
I'm going to take the obvious one and the one that, Toya already hit on. Teaching. Showing people your craft and being there for the people who want to learn. Don't try to shove it down people's throats. That's the big thing that I think.
Yeah, I think like as a knight, it's about, sounds cliche, but like giving back, like, oh, for all this time, the game has given me all these things. So as a knight, I'm going to give back to the younger generations of Amtgard, these things that I've learned so that they can know them now.
Yeah. Or these are things I really wish somebody had offered me when I was at this stage, and I would like to try to give folks any upper hand I can give them. And for me, a bit more than teaching, it's more encouraging. I try really, really hard to be a cheerleader of anybody who wants to make anything. Like, I want to see what you're working on. I love it. Like, if you need a reason to make things, it's because I want to see it. And that's, like, I hope that helps. I think it helps. I think I don't know, and I think that's one of the more valuable things I could do as a knight. I mean, I don't know, the Circle of Knights is kind of, has zero power. I don't think most people are doing it for the circle, being part of a council, but it's, I don't know, you're part of a symbol, you're part of, I don't know, I want to help. I want to help, and I kind of have a platform to do that in a way because of the jewelry and the belt. I don't know.
I saw somebody say something that they said that knights shouldn't have to teach, and 100% agree. The other part I want to just go is piggyback on what you just said, Maggie, about like being that a knight is teaching by example, teaching by being this next level, this next thing, whatever that thing is. That thing is going to be just as subjective as how it took them to get to that level of knighthood. However it got there, like that's going to be their path and that's going to be theirs. So yeah, like that's something else that I kind of wanted to talk about.
I don't think knights as being like the bar of whatever it is, like the bar of service, the bar of art, like the bar that you have to reach, like being the next thing. I think that's where masterhood shines, of like being the bar. For me, knighthood is primarily, I'm going to wrap in this teaching and encouragement thing in the word empowerment.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, I think that's the biggest responsibility of knights, is to be empowering. And that's like, because knights are visible.
Yeah.
And like using that power of visibility to empower other people. I also think it is every Amtgarder's responsibility to empower one another to do stuff. Like, to the extent that you can. Like, build each other up, not like all the way up. Like, all the way up the ladder, if you're chasing ladder awards. If you're not chasing ladder awards, just help other people do cool stuff. It makes it better.
Yeah.
But like, as I think knights are in a position of social power, where they have a responsibility to use that power to empower other people to do cool stuff.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble going from player who enters stuff and is good at art to all of a sudden a social figure who is, I don't know, it was a lot of pressure. It was a lot of like just a lot of minor things that really piled up that I just had a lot of trouble with. And it's some of that's definitely like the imposter theory thing, and not like I still felt like a squire for months and months. I don't know, but like that is definitely part of the social contract of Amtgard, and I think everybody kind of approaches it differently, and it's hard to, I don't know, I think you kind of need to learn to navigate it by yourself, but it's nice to see other examples of how folks acclimate to that role.
I hope it's not something folks have to navigate all by themselves.
I don't think so either, but I mean, I was looking for examples of how do I do this? How do you do this? How do you do this? And that wasn't very helpful for what I should do, but it was like, I couldn't do what other people were doing. I had to figure something out. But yeah, no, absolutely. This isn't, I don't mean that as a, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and figure it out yourself. Absolutely not. But it's, I don't know. I think just something kind of personal.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
I know I felt like I was really lucky in Vigil, and like in some of the conversations I had with people just before I was knighted, that was something that came up, and like people talked to me about it, and I got to kind of like have that thought going in of like, what does this mean? Like, what does this change? I mean, ideally nothing, because I would hope people would come to me to talk about art stuff before, but
Yeah.
Yeah,
Casey, I don't know if you've had the experience yet because you were knighted during COVID times, but going to another kingdom where the only thing people know is you have a white belt, for me, that was a lot of like just kind of getting thrown in the deep end of the social navigation.
I haven't yet. I just moved, so I have.
Yeah,
not
that
gone to
too.
the
Yes,
park
sorry.
yet.
Yes, like all kinds of crap. But that was
I admit it's a little terrifying that I'm, the idea of like, oh, I'm gonna walk up to no park and they're going to see my belt and be like,
yeah,
yeah. But I mean, so it goes. I knew what I was signing up for.
Yeah.
And like, not to make that sound like, oh, such a burden, but like, yeah, I read the warning labels on the package.
All right, so we are kind of coming up on like the scheduled time, but I'll throw one more question out, and that is, the question was, how has your view of knights and knighthood changed over the course of your time in the game?
Oh my gosh.
What? Last question, go. No.
So the first thing that comes to mind for me is that when I was new to the game, knights were on a pedestal, people to be looked up to, really intimidating humans. Like, they're so awesome, and it makes it really scary to go up there. And the evolution has been, these people are awesome, they've done great work, they're leaders in the game, but they're also still people. And however awesome they may be or their accomplishments may be, they are at the end of the day still people and can be approached and treated as such.
Well said.
Yeah, that was almost my answer for verbatim. That like, looking up to knights and being like, they're far untouchable, like, oh wow, they're so cool, and getting to know them better, especially Serpent knights, and be like, oh, they're nerds like me. This is great.
Yeah. No, Léal, touching on what you said as far as like remembering their people, I think that is true, but I think that is also on knights to remind everybody of that as well. I don't think that it is fair for knights to, kind of, because like we know, we've been there. We know the cycle. We know how, perception is of these, social stuff. And I don't think it's fair to be, for example, I don't think it would be fair for me to just like be like, what's your problem? Get over it. I'm just a person. Like, I feel like I need to also, more so, I need to close the distance there a bit. I think that's part of my responsibility. Man, knights were celebrities. I remember the first time I met a female knight. I remember the first knight I met. Meeting new ones kind of felt like finding a new Pokemon or something that's just kind of got like added to your collection of it was weird. It was very weird. Yeah, no, I have too many years to sort through for that. Like, I don't entirely remember what being like 16 and meeting knights was like, and I don't know. I hope I can be a decent impression and introduction to what knights can be for other people.
From my experience, you absolutely are.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's something I think about a lot.
Yeah. There was a time too where I was a little disillusioned with knighthood because I looked at a lot of the knights in our kingdom and saw just how tired they were of all of the social navigation stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like, so I read the warning labels on the package. And for a while, I was like, I don't know if that's something I want to think about having in my life. I don't know if I want to sign that social contract.
Fair. Yeah.
And there's been some culture changes, especially in the last year or so, where I think it's getting a little bit better. And I hope that post-COVID, like as parks are opening back up and such, and hopefully as we move into a more vaccinated world where folks are free to do things per usual, I hope that we carry that culture change with us and that things continue to get a little more evenly footed.
Yeah. Yeah, Amtgard is always improving. And I think sometimes I'm overly optimistic just because of how much it has changed since I've been a part of it. Again, in overwhelmingly positive ways, and it still has so far to go, but I agree, and I really hope that Knights, I don't know, trying to make the game better and trying to hold themselves accountable is something that we keep.
I think there's different ways to be a knight sometimes, even within the same path.
Oh yeah.
You know,
For
like,
sure.
when I think about, not to like put people on the spot, like, oh, and I think about the way you're a knight and the way that Chalet is a knight. You're both serpent knights, but you're both different kinds of, like, you approach some things differently, and the way that you interact with the community is different. And neither are wrong, and neither are better than the others. They're both great. And like going into being a knight, that was something that was really interesting to see and like exciting. Because I once asked a knight, I was like, if I was gonna be a knight, does that mean I have to fight everyone like about things all the time? Because I don't want to do that. I'm not good at that.
Me
They're like,
neither.
"No."
Yeah.
I think there's also somebody who's coming up on knighthood and doesn't necessarily have a masterhood or a knighthood. It also becomes a bit of a training ground at higher level awards to start to, if your goal is to get knighthood, to start working on those social skills early before you get that white belt, because you're going to need them. And you're going to need them. You know, that was kind of the thing that happened to me early on, was like watching knights and like how they interacted with one another in an Amtgard culture. It was something like, okay, this is something you really want. You have to be able to navigate this. You have to be able to communicate and communicate well. Whether it's with people, again, like whether you're, you know, moving laterally or whether you're moving vertically, you've got to be able to communicate well and be able to empower people. Léal, I love that. I love that idea of the word empower, even if it's empowering our fellow knights.
All right. Well, any last comments from anybody? I'll do a 10 seconds for anyone in the audience if you have any questions before we close it out.
Fuzz, I want you to read the comment that you put in the chat.
Okay, so my comment was that I think it is important that knights also help players be aware that knighthood doesn't have to be the end goal, and it's okay to never want to be a knight. And I do 100% think that is important. Like,
Yes.
knighthood is a goal that can happen in this game. If you never want to be a knight, cool. Knight, you know, nobody, knights or otherwise, should look down on you for that. You shouldn't look down on yourself. It's a thing in this game that comes with its own responsibilities, like everyone here has just talked about. And if that's not for you, cool. There's still plenty of awesome, great things you can do in the game to help make it a better place for everybody. Like, it's not winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, if it was, you wouldn't have so many people who, you know, there's a big trend of people who get knighted and then they retire.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't seem like winning.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Thank you, everyone, so very, very much for, you know, being here with me and being on this panel and helping out. I appreciate it. You know, for Tiril, Toya, Brenna, Léal, thank you so very, very much. Denkri, thank you so much for doing the recording and editing for these videos. And when she's finished with those, they'll be put up on the Amtgard Leadership University YouTube page. And I'll also make sure links get posted when the videos are done. Thank you everyone who came and watched tonight. Thank you for everyone who is watching this in the future. And I hope that you get some benefit out of it. And with that, everyone have a good night and a wonderful weekend.
You as well.
Thank you, Fuzz. Thank you, everybody.
You.
Thank you.